Living in America used to be a dream for so many people far away and unseen. With their big cars, movie stars, living in America. Now all hail to the red, white, and blue. Living in America was a dream. In this land they tell you to reach for anything you want. And everything is possible, just believe that you can. 'Cause we're God's chosen children, living in America without long hugs and white picket fences, living in America.
Hey everybody, this is Richard Sachs. I'm your host on Lost Arts Radio. This is our show for worldwide broadcast on the 3rd day of June 2018. Amazingly, almost halfway through the year. Seems like about 10 minutes to me, but time's going faster and faster. We have an exciting guest tonight, and I want to give you a few words of introduction here, context for what we're doing, because I would like this to become a show that's listened to by a lot of different people to learn more about what our guest is doing. And I guess what I want to say first is all of us who have been paying attention have noticed kind of an organized campaign to promote insanity in the U.S. and the world that's ramping up. And in the last 20 years of the health research that I started in the 60s, I did an in-depth investigation of the power structure that's been in control of the U.S. and most of the world for a long time, and connected a lot of the dots and found out what the agenda is exactly and why it's happening and how they intend to do it, and learned probably more than I wanted to about it, but that was necessary to make good strategic decisions about how to use the time that we have. And since then, besides finding ways to give people tools to heal themselves in an atmosphere where real health information is violently suppressed, especially in the U.S. and U.K., but many other places as well, and to help people to raise their energy levels and wake up their immune system so they don't have to worry about falling apart in so-called old age and all that kind of stuff, or infectious disease or degeneration or anything. I think that's important for the people ready to do the work to accomplish that, and it's available to anyone. However, my deeper motive in the whole thing is to help turn the U.S. and the world away from the current trajectory heading towards self-destruction. So if I notice anybody in all the exposure to people that I have who's doing something like that in a super inspiring way, I really want to support them. And you know that we support Alex Jones's show and recommend it for a news source for people all the time. And we share a lot of guests with Alex. I saw tonight's guest, Brandon Tatum, on Alex's show, as well as on social media, and was super impressed. I thought, wow, I wonder if he'd be kind enough to come on our show. Doesn't really need it when he can go on Alex's show anytime, but I thought if he would, let us really introduce him in some depth and his work and his background. And I'll just say for now, because we're going to go into that, I don't need to read an in-depth bio, but just as an introduction for people that don't know, he's a former Tucson police officer, and now he works with what sounds like an incredible organization that I just heard of. Should have known about it before because it's really established and large. It's called Turning Point USA, an organization to help kids in some really important ways, right in line with what I just said about regaining and keeping sanity in a very challenging environment. So I want to start by going back into Brandon's own childhood, if he's willing to do that, and see how he got from there to where he is now. And then we'll get into the current work and what he wants to accomplish and how we can all help with that. So welcome, Brandon. I really am grateful that you gave us some of your time. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for having me. I appreciate you bringing me on.
So would that be okay for you, since your organization and your work right now is largely with kids, although I'm sure you work with adults too, let's introduce you as you were as a kid, your environment, where you grew up, and what that made you want to do, and how you took steps to get from there to where you are now. Then we'll get into what you're doing with the organization.
Okay. So I like to use the terminology, and I think it may be kind of funny to use this, but it's going to be the first line of my book.
Okay.
It's that I grew up raw. When I say raw, kind of the thought that comes to my mind is like a raw piece of steak.
Okay.
When you cook it, it's good for you. If you don't cook it, you can be sick. If it's not prepared well, it takes a lot of preparation, multiple different avenues to make a steak what it is. And I consider my childhood to be very similar, because who I was as an individual was kind of like this raw talent, or this raw, I don't want to say piece of meat, but you get the.
I know what you mean, process. Right? Yeah. So it could be developed in a number of different ways.
Right. Without the proper development, I would be a nobody. Okay. And because I came from a good background and then I had a stable environment, although my parents were separated, I became who I am today. But I'll say this: my mom and dad were separated. I never remember them being together at all. I think they separated when I was really young. My mom and dad didn't really get along well when I was growing up. I mean, I think it was sort of an adversity for them to be at the same football game. Okay. Of me playing in. So that's kind of where I started. My dad was a firefighter. He's been a firefighter since before I was born. And he's obviously has continued that career path. My mom, very flexible with what she does. Sometimes I didn't know what she did for a living. And sometimes, I could see that she was actually working on a job. I could say, I can't be ashamed to really express kind of my background. And this is no offense to my mom, because I think I had a terrific mom. She worked hard, but my mom tended to fall down in the wrong path when it comes to dating and being with certain men. I could say one of the more prominent men that she dated that I think was involved in our lives a lot longer, or the most, he died from heroin overdose, and he was a big time gangster and a drug dealer. Okay. And so I was able to grow a lot in that aspect, learning what it's like to be around that environment. He carried a gun. I mean, he had a sawed-off shotgun that he would put next to his bed every night. So growing up.
Brandon, by the way, I didn't want to introduce you as a superstar. I want you to be human. So getting into these kind of details is great, because there's a lot of people that can relate to it.
Yeah. So, and I just I don't want to make my mama feel bad, but I think she understands where I'm coming from and how this story is very important, because I wasn't the only one that grew up like this. So, having that experience with my stepdad, his name was Jay. Having that experience with him kind of made my background a lot more diverse. Like I said, my dad was a lot more structured. My dad was a firefighter, and he still is a firefighter today. So, okay. So that's kind of how I grew up, man. One side of my family was very heavily involved in the gang activity and crime. And, when I was very young, I can't remember how old me and my brother were. We got jumped in a gang. Wow. One of my older cousins jumped us in a gang, the 5 Deuce Hoover Crip. Just so you know, you're one of the first people to ever hear my story. So, a lot of people are going to hear this. So I'm real happy about it, because I want a story about how a regular human being got from the challenges of their early environment into something really exciting, and all the steps are important. Yeah, awesome. So yeah, we got jumped in a gang at a very young age. Of course, my dad didn't know about it. My mom slightly found out about it, and we got in trouble for it. But we grew up, and I'm speaking to the side that I grew up where we lived in the hood, and then I'll address the other kinds. But we grew up in that environment. My family members were on drugs. None of them graduated high school. I think one of my cousins graduated high school, which would be the only one on that side of my family that I know of, and it was like her graduating from college. The family separated.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, she was a hero. I mean, she was going to be somebody in life, and just because she graduated high school, so yeah. And that's kind of one side of my family in that aspect, you know, I have 4 family members doing life in prison right now from that side of the family. One for drug dealing. One of my cousins shot like 3 people. Thank God he didn't kill them because he would be doing even more time in prison.
Right.
But when I say life, they're doing the rest of their life in prison because I don't know when he's going to get out. And he was 30 when he went in. And I think it was something like 60 years.
Yeah.
My uncle got 40 years federal time for drug dealing. And he went in when he was 50. So I'm pretty sure that's going to be his last destination.
Right.
And then uncle that got 25 to life for robbing a convenience store, which my grandmother has on tape because it came on the news and she recorded it. So he got 25 to life. He's still in prison. I think when we were really little. He may be getting out if he only have to do 25 years. And then I have a family member who murdered somebody, faked his death, and then he doing life in prison.
Right.
So, you know, growing up, I get a little like a feed from that environment. You know, I grew up.
Pretty intense.
Some of my cousins, they had roaches in their houses, and to them, we were rich. We were rich, you know, even though we weren't.
Right.
We were more like middle class, maybe lower middle class when I was growing up. But to them, we were rich. You know, I got into a little bit of trouble when I was young. At 8 years old, I went to juvenile. I was only in there for I don't know, a few hours because my dad came to get us. But we got in trouble for smoking marijuana, and we were in a vacant house when they busted us in there. Yeah. And we had been smoking marijuana for a while before that happened. And then, you know, I guess that's the tumultuous side.
How old were you when that happened?
I was 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I was 8 years old. I was just the age that I could actually go to jail, you know, go to.
Yeah, so you could have gotten in a pretty bad direction after that, depending on how things went.
Yeah, and the most impactful thing that ever happened to me, the trajectory or the pivotal moment that sent me in a positive trajectory was the fact that I loved basketball to death. Wow. And wanted to be like Michael Jordan. And typically, when you get in trouble in my household, and we got in trouble, but my dad is the one that came and picked us up. And when you get in trouble in my daddy's household, you get whooping. You know what I'm saying? You get your butt.
Yeah.
And one thing my dad did, and I think that this changed my life forever, is that when we left that place, we didn't get a whooping. He didn't even whoop me. What he told me in the ride home in the car is he looked at me and he said, Brandon, you will never play in the NBA if you get yourself involved in stuff like this. You will ruin your opportunity to play in the NBA. That meant more to me than any whooping that he could have ever given me.
Wow.
And it really set me up to the point where then I never smoked marijuana after that. So that kind of give you just a small glimpse about kind of one side of my family. And then, of course, my dad's side was, you know, he was more stable. We pretty much moved up. You know, we started in Forest Hill and Dad moved to Crowley. And we lived back and forth with my mama and daddy off and on, depending on the year or whatever. We would go back and forth. So both of them were actively involved in our lives. But
so what city did you mostly live in?
We in Fort Worth, Texas.
Okay.
So for the most part, even though we moved back and forth, most of the time we lived in Fort Worth, Texas, or we lived in a small suburb just outside of Fort Worth. Right. At one point, my mom lived in a place called White Settlement, which was a really nice area. And then my dad, we lived in Forest Hill, which was a better area than the hood. And then we moved up to living in Crowley. We went to diverse kinds of high schools or grade schools all the way up to high school, because there was times where our parents put us in private school. We went to other schools that weren't so good. You know, in middle school, we went to a private school. Then we went to North Crowley Middle School, which is a nice school.
Right.
And then my brother and I I was a freshman at North Crowley High School, which was a good school. And then we finished at Dunbar High School, which was a school right in the middle of the hood in the inner city. So I guess, you know, I guess my timeline is a little scattered, but I just want to give you a glimpse of like kind of the trajectory and some of the things that I got involved in as a youngster, kind of the balance between having a parent who was a little more rugged and then having another parent that was a little more structured. I guess a short background about my mom and daddy, just real quick, just so you can kind of understand how this dynamic occurred and how it could be a residual effect that, thank God, I was able to slightly break the cycle. My dad didn't know his dad. I think his dad left when my dad was like 11. So he came back when my dad was in his 30s. my mama never knew her dad. She met him when she was probably 40. And an interesting thing is that my mom, and the reason why I never blame her for the way she raised us or the imperfections that she had, because her mother had her when she was 12 years old.
Wow.
My grandmother don't even know how to read. And she can read a little bit better now because she taped a lot of movies and stuff like that. So she have an opportunity to kind of learn some words, but my grandmother can't even read. So that obviously set my mama up for a very, very difficult trajectory. She did a hell of a job with us. You know, given the fact that we turned out pretty good, both of us went to college. So that's pretty much the foundation of how I grew up. Both of my parents worked hard, and they made us who we are today.
So what happened right after your dad picked you up and told you about not getting into the NBA?
Well, it struck a nerve in me. You know, it made me reflect more than I ever have as a kid, because, you know, growing up in an environment where my cousins, when we would go visit them, that was okay for them. You know, they didn't have a lot of money. So when we would go over there, my dad would give us a $20 bill so we can feed ourselves. So my auntie and them didn't have to spend their money because they didn't have money like that, you know, so we wouldn't be a burden. But they used to take the money and go buy weed with it. And then we'll take a little money back to eat with, but they'll take a little bit and buy weed with. So in an environment like that, I mean, it seems cool to do that. It seems, you know, normal. And my ambition and my dreams and my aspirations to be who I thought Michael Jordan was, it superseded the desire to head down the wrong path. So after my dad told me that, it like I said, it sent me in a trajectory where I would always consider what I'm doing and how this will affect my future.
And you said you were, 11 when that happened?
Oh, I was 8 when that happened.
8, I'm sorry. So did that actually change what you did during the day in any way, or just what you were thinking about? It
changed the way I thought. And when I would be around those cousins and stuff, I mean, obviously my dad, we didn't go around them for a little bit after that, because that was we got into pretty big trouble. But after that, I would always think to myself, like, I really need to watch what I'm doing. And it kind of built a fear in me, which led to me being a police officer and being an effective police officer. It led a fear in me to have more integrity, right? Do what's right when nobody's watching.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's kind of what it fueled in me. And I was always afraid of getting in trouble. Ever since that day, I was always afraid. No matter if my dad was there or not, I would always be afraid to, like, get myself into some kind of trouble, because I didn't want anything to derail me from what my dreams was. And at the time, as an 8-year-old kid, I wanted to go to the NBA. Right.
Wow. So let's see. I'm trying to think. Yeah, your timeline's a little scattered. I'm trying to think of where we are now. You kind of skipped over a lot of what happened to you in junior high and high school after that, and how it was affected by the attitude that you just expressed in the middle of some unusual environments.
Yeah, so in middle school, passing elementary to middle school, I think that sports became a really big part of my life. You know, obviously I was pursuing my dreams of playing basketball. And I think for the most part, that kept me out of a lot of trouble. At that point, for the most part, we lived with my dad. But even when we lived with my mom, we were involved in sports heavily. So it really helped me to stay focused and kind of get beyond, you know, my time as a 8-year-old getting into trouble with my older cousins.
Yeah.
And I think that's what dominated my perspective. That's kind of what helped me become a more stable young man. Not to say my parents weren't always on me, you know, they were doing their part, but when they weren't watching, what was encouraging me was the athletics, you know, the ability to play basketball and to try to have these dreams that I would one day play in the NBA.
So having the dream and not wanting to lose it saved your life, basically. Yes,
that conversation in that van, in my dad's van, he had an Astro van with a top on it with a TV in it. It was really, we loved that van. We traveled in it, but the conversation he had with me in that van really changed my life. As one of many steps that changed my life and my trajectory moving forward.
And you played all kinds of sports, not just basketball, right?
Yeah, I played basketball. Basketball was my favorite. I ventured into football and we played a little pee-wee football, which we were really young, but I really started taking football serious when I got to middle school. So I played basketball, football, and I ran track. Okay. And the interesting thing was that I was a real hard hitter in football, but I wasn't really good. And basketball, even though it was my dream and I played every day, I wasn't good dribbling with my left hand, so I was on the B team. So, you know, my professional aspirations as an athlete in middle school were slowly dwindling, although my dreams didn't, but my accomplishments were really dwindling.
Were you tall enough to play basketball?
I was tall enough to play basketball, but with my skill set, I wasn't tall enough because I could jump really high, but I wasn't a dribbler. So I was my skill set. I was very aggressive and stuff like that. I could rebound. My skill set put me at a power forward or a center, but I wasn't tall enough to be a power forward or a center. Put it that way.
Okay. And what events did you do in track?
I ran the 100. I ran the 4x100 meter relay, and I did the field events, the long jump and the triple jump, and I did the high jump a little bit. Okay,
so you jumped and sprinted, basically.
Yes, quick twitch muscles were my forte.
Yeah, neat. Okay, and then you ended up. Where did you go to high school?
So I went to two different high schools. My freshman year in high school, I went to North Crowley High School, which is kind of like a middle class, diverse, you know, black, white, all races, just kind of like a middle class community. Very, very good school. I mean, we had our own stadium at the school. We had our own track at the school. We had a field house just for the football team. It was a really, really good school. Big, nice, brand new, low crime, low, trouble, really good teachers. It was a really good school.
Okay.
And then because, to be honest, we wanted to make it in, because after middle school, my freshman year in high school, I started taking football more serious because I just gave up on basketball. I wasn't tall enough to be a center.
Okay.
And I found that it wasn't really, I was too aggressive in basketball. I would foul out every game. So I realized that football was probably more of my skill set. So I really started becoming more serious about football when I was a freshman at North Crowley. And then my idols began to change. I was idolizing Lil Danian Tomlinson because he went to TCU. Cedric Benson was one of my role models. Ricky Williams, other guys like that. I wanted to be a running back. And so I really started picking up on football when I was a freshman. Okay. And so my brother, which he would be another great person to interview, my brother, he was by far the fastest guy I've ever seen. So his ability in track and in football both led me and my brother to want to transfer schools so that we can have more opportunity to go to college. Because although North Crowley was a really good school, they didn't have any connections and they weren't putting anybody in college.
Oh, okay.
So Dunbar High School, which is right in the middle of the hood, my mama actually went to Dunbar High School, and some of my cousins went there, and they were producing athletes year after year after year. So me and my brother wanted to go there to contribute to the football team, and kind of make a name for ourselves to have an opportunity to go to college. But when we went there, it was a rude awakening, and this was the real idea of the difference between suburbs and the inner city.
You mean issues other than football? Obviously, you're talking.
Yeah, issues. I'm talking about poverty. I'm talking about school structure. It was like night and day. Okay. At Dunbar High School, and this is not a knock against Dunbar because I'm sure that people work hard and do the best they can. But at Dunbar High School, we didn't have a track. We had a path that went around the football field that was rocks and dirt, and that was considered our track.
Okay.
We didn't have a football field. Our football field was uneven grass with potholes in it. We didn't even have a weight room.
They were producing good football players, though. Right?
Oh, they had the best. In my team alone, we had 4 All-Americans and 9 Division I players.
So if you learn to play in potholes and everything, you probably have an easy time on a normal field.
Oh, yeah. I'm telling you, the adversity, this is the dynamic that we went through. The adversity made me who I am today. So I'm not really complaining about the adversity, but I'm just telling you about the opportunity. And, And then and that's just football. Now you go to violence. You know, all of our books appeared to be outdated. The teachers really didn't care. I mean, you had half of the teachers that didn't care and half of the teachers that actually cared about your education, which means that half of the teachers will just pass you, you know, and other teachers will work you hard. So, but the books were old. The desks looked like the desks that my mama probably sat in when she went to the school. There was no security at the school, no legitimate security. People would literally come off the street in the school and fight.
Wow.
I mean, grown-ups, not kids, not just kids.
Yeah, to beat up the kids, you mean?
Yeah, like if somebody had beef with another person's family, you know, the older brother would come to the school and that older brother be like 25 years old.
Wow. And
they'll come to the school and fight in the school.
That's not really a fight, right? That's more of an assault from the outside.
Well, kind of, sort of. It just depends on how you look at it, because back then, where, you know, in high school, 18, 17-year-olds selling drugs and carrying guns. And so it was kind of like somewhat of a mutual combat situation when it comes, because, you know, it was some of it was gang related. So it wasn't a one-on-one fight anyway.
Exactly.
But so that's the kind of condition of that school, which inevitably made us better. I did get kicked out of high school my senior year. I mean, I already had a scholarship to University of Arizona at the time. By the way, I ended up being an All-American football player, and I had scholarship to almost every university you can think of. I was the top 78 player in the nation.
Did you end up as a running back like you wanted?
No, I ended up playing safety.
Okay.
So I ended up being like one of the top safeties in the nation. I still was talented to play running back, but because I had gotten taller and I was a little thinner, people didn't really see me as a running back. Although when I got interceptions, I was running touchdowns from 109 yards out. So
that always helps a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. So I enjoy getting interceptions and being able to live out my dreams as a running back. But so I ended up being an All-American, and my last year I got kicked out of school. They ended up bringing me back, but I got into a conflict with a teacher where I threw a chair at her. I was going to fight her if people didn't hold me back.
Yeah.
So, and I got.
She must have done something that was pretty upsetting to you.
Yeah, and to be honest, man, with all that I went through, and I could say that, you know, when I was growing up, I saw domestic violence. And
you think you were just acting according to that pattern that had kind of sunk into your subconscious or something? Yeah,
it was sunk into my subconscious, and I just grew up aggressive, you know, like watching, you know, certain stuff happen within the family, people fighting each other, you know, when we were younger, we fought each other, you know, me and my brother didn't fight, 'cause my mom and daddy would beat us if we fought each other, but, you know, me and my cousins, we would fight each other. Sometimes they would schedule a fight for us. We would put boxing gloves on and we see which little cousin can fight the best. So we kind of grew up with a little bit of aggression and animosity in our system. And I think that when I went to I can't blame it on the school, because I've always been kind of like that. I see it in my son. You know, I just always had that. I just felt like a very, very aggressive person, which kind of made me good at football. But, you know, I kind of had it in me, and the teacher did something crazy that I felt was crazy to me. And I went off and ended up getting kicked out of school.
Right. And then they forgave you and you got back.
Yeah, they wanted to do it for 6 weeks, which would then put me, I think, close to the end of the year. I would have missed the entire track season. And my dad petitioned that, you know, that was too harsh. And the teacher, she did have fault. They ended up firing her, but she did have some fault in what she did. And they gave me 3 weeks out. And that was another pivotal point in my life, was when they kicked me out, I went to alternative school. And
so what was that like?
Oh, it was hell. All my freedoms were gone. You know, I had to wear a uniform. We had to go through metal detectors. We couldn't have regular standard number 2 pencils. We had to have them little I don't know, you know, pencils that you use to vote or whatever.
Yeah, little tiny ones, right?
Little pink pencilettes or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
But we had those. I mean, we were in a structured environment, and it was hell for me because I was never used to that. You know, I remember I was in public school. We had freedom. Even in private school, we had freedom. So that thing was like a sort of a school,
kind of like going to jail in a way. Right?
It was like going to jail. You had to be there at 6 o'clock in the morning. If you wasn't exactly on time, it was kind of militant a little bit. You know? Walk a certain way, talk a certain way. You couldn't use curse words. Like, You had to go to the restroom whenever they tell you to go. Like, it was bad, man. I missed the freedom so much, and I learned a valuable lesson. That was step number 2 in my life that completely changed my life.
Wow. So you got back to your regular school, like what, a few weeks before the end?
Yeah, I got back to a few weeks. It ended up being like a few weeks before track season. It was like I missed a little bit of track season, so I ended up getting back enough to run track, and I made it to state. I think I made it to state in the long and triple jump, but I ended up forfeiting. I didn't go to state because they had a Nike football camp the same day that I would be going to state.
Oh, okay.
And so, football was already my thing, so I wanted to build my brand. So I ended up just forfeiting that last year of track anyway. Yeah,
interesting. Okay. All right, and then how long between there and when you graduated from high school?
So, it's just a short time after the track season concluded. I can't remember the actual time period, but track season concluded, I graduated, and I left home for the first time and moved to Arizona.
And that was one of many offered scholarships, right, on the basis of football?
I had scholarships everywhere. I was the top 78 player in the nation. I think I could have had a scholarship anywhere if I wanted to go. There was an interesting dynamic with that because my brother was also an All-American the year before. So he went to University of Texas. I wanted to go to University of Texas my whole life. So they ended up not offering any defensive backs scholarships in my year. So they had me rated as the number 1 safety in the nation, and they still didn't offer me a scholarship because they offered like 6 or 7 DBs in my brother's class. They were going to bring me on as a running back, but they ended up having a need to bring on a running back, which was Jamal Charles at the time. And me and him played in the All-American game. So I ended up having to find out another college to go to. It's a long, interesting story on how I got to Arizona, but because of Coach Stoops, I ended up committing to the University of Arizona. Okay.
And so how did it work out over there?
Oh, it was terrible. It was probably one of the worst times of my life, was when I was at University of Arizona as far as athletics. Because
why was it so bad?
It was because I came in as an All-American. They had 2 guys that were really good in front of me, so I started on all the special teams my freshman year. But the residual attitude kind of came with me, and the coaches were really, really, really rude, and they would cuss you out and call you names to your face, and I didn't handle that well. So although I was a great athlete, me and them butted heads immediately when I got there my freshman year. So it kind of put me at a disadvantage. I was kind of in the doghouse.
Why do you think they were doing that? Did they think that being like a drill sergeant would make people better or something?
Yeah, they believed that was the tactic to use. But, I grew up kind of rough. So, it didn't work well with me because I took it personal. I couldn't overlook them cussing me and calling me names to my face. It offended me to the point where I wanted to fight them, And so now being a grown man that I am today, if I could go back, it'd be different. But as an 18-year-old kid, man, I couldn't handle that. So I was in a doghouse. I had a season-ending injury my second year. And then after that, it was all downhill, man. Even though I was the best athlete on the team, they never played me. They made excuses why they didn't play me. It was such a terrible situation. They ended up getting fired, obviously, because they had their picks and they did shady stuff to players all the time, and which cost us games, and then they end up getting fired. But that was a terrible experience. Now I wouldn't take it back for the world because I learned a whole lot when I was in college, because there was more of an aspect of reality than just football. So my football aspect of it was the worst of my life. Yeah. Educationally, going to the University of Arizona, being in a different demographic, I grew up all around a number of black people pretty much my whole life. And then the last 3 years of my high school was at Dunbar High School, which is in the middle of nothing but black people, and everybody at the school is essentially black, except for a couple of foreign students that came to our school for a specific education. Yeah. But going to University of Arizona, which was primarily white, was culture shock for me. And it really helped dispel some of the myths that I had about white people coming into college, which is one of my pivotal points when it comes to my red pill moment. But we can get to that in a minute. But
okay,
yeah, I grew up, man. I grew up feeling like in Texas and being from where I was from, I felt like white people didn't like black people. Maybe sparingly they did, but overall it was always this cloud over my head that no matter who you are, white people will never want to see you become better than them, or they don't ever want to see you grow. And it was unfortunate that that's the thought process that I had going into college. But when I got there, I started realizing, like, I don't think black and white people have that much of a problem like I grew up thinking. And like I said, this wasn't something my parents taught me. This was something my peers taught me. This is something that, like, was culturally ingrained in my mind over time. Yeah. So that really helped me, man. Just seeing a different environment, different culture. And it really helped me open my understanding to being more diverse in my thought and dispelling a lot of myths that I had against white people.
So you got some different kinds of friends, I guess, when you get that right.
Yeah, got different kind of friends. And you're forced to have different cultures. The white guys on the football team, we became best friends. All of us became like family, white. Yeah. We had white, black, Hispanic, and Samoan, Polynesian or whatever you call it. We had all kinds of people from everywhere, all across the country coming to the team. So we kind of became a melting pot, and that helped. And then all of my classes, everybody in my classes were white, other than the athletes.
Right, right.
Working with people in classes kind of open your understanding and feeling like, dang, I don't really think that there's this much racial division as I was previously taught there was. And I kind of realized that most people are the same. They just so happen to be different colors, but there's only a few different type of people in the world. You know what I'm saying? It's not like there's white, black. It's like there's good and bad, and they come in whatever color they so happen to be born into. So
yeah, exactly. So how did you decide what kind of classes to take outside of the athletic stuff?
Oh, I mean, everything was based around athletics. And I think that some people still have a problem with that today, which I don't have a problem with. But, it was about football. It wasn't really about education when I was going to college, to be quite honest. It was like, what classes can I take that's going to allow me to pass, that's going to give me the least amount of resistance so I can play football?
Yeah, exactly.
And if I knew,
I don't understand why there would be a problem with that. It makes sense to me.
Well, they the one paying for my scholarship. I mean, the school ain't paying it. If the NCAA, the college team is going to pay for me to do things that's conducive to help the team. They helped us with education, but that's not the point. Like you need to know your playbook. So you need to be active in all the activities that we did for 12 hours a day. Pretty much, you can't take classes on the weekends. I mean, we had a guy who was an All-American that was All-American with me, David Borg. He was from Arizona. He quit the football team because he wanted to pursue his education, and they told him he couldn't do classes on the weekends because we had games. So he quit football altogether.
Okay.
He walked away from it. But anyway, so I just picked classes I thought was easy, and communications. I obviously want to study Black African American studies, which was one thing I studied. I chose to study. And then communication sounded to be easy until I did communications 101, and I thought it was the stupidest thing I ever heard. So I switched to sociology. Okay. And so that's kind of my path. And I ended up liking the sociology classes, but like I said, it's kind of the back burner to football.
Yeah, exactly. So did you stay there for 4 years?
I ended up being there for 5 years. I graduated in 4, but I stayed for one more year because my sophomore year, I had a season-ending injury. I just had a high ankle sprain that ended my season. And so they gave me a medical red shirt. So it gave me an extra year to play football. So I stayed there. Okay. I graduated in 4, and I stayed there for an additional year.
Right. So overall, it was bad and good, I guess, both at the same time, right?
It was the worst time and the best time of my life. In hindsight, it was the greatest time of my life. When I was living through it, man, it was terrible. Especially football was terrible. And now, thank God, I don't play football, to be honest. But then also one crucial thing that happened to me when I was in college is that I honestly started taking God serious. At least I made the attempt, which led me down the path of getting saved and being more committed to church. I found a church out there in 2008, a church that I loved. I got saved in the church, and I was very active in the church from 2008 on, which sort of changed, which was another element of changing my life forever. Because
Were you still in college at that point? I'm trying to match it up with the time.
Yeah, I got it. I joined college in 2005, and then I graduated in 2009, and then I left in 2010. So 2008 was like a couple years before I graduated. But, an interesting thing that I forgot to mention is that, I even forget I was this way. But coming into college, I still dragged a lot of the culture in. So I had gold teeth in my mouth. I sagged my pants. I got tattoos all over my arms, and I have a tattoo that says Young Savage on my stomach. I heavily listen to rap music. I said the N-word every 5 minutes. I cursed out probably every third word that came out of my mouth. And when I got saved, everything changed. Like,
so what made you even want to think about that different attitude? I mean, what got you involved in the whole subject of God and a different lifestyle and all that?
Because of the football thing. The football started going south, and I had to I didn't know who I was anymore. I was on a path. I was like, I don't know where to go from here. Like, I need to really figure out who I am. Like, football is not really going well, but I also need to figure out, do I believe in God or do I not? Yeah.
So you were looking for some, I guess, meaning in your life at that point, right?
Oh yeah, I was trying to like, I was on cloud nine coming into college. I was the man, and when things went south, I started to really question, like, well, wait a minute, where am I? Like, this could actually not go like I thought it did, and like,
right,
I don't even know who I am. Like, all I know is my identity in football. So once
that identity started to fall apart, basically.
It started to fall apart, and I started forgetting, like, I started to think about, like, who I am. Like, I need to really figure out who am I. And one of the things I wanted to do is find out where I stand with God. And I was like, I think I believe in God. I was raised to believe in God. We went to church. But, like, is God real or not? I need to know, because I'm starting to rule out stuff in my life.
What did the people at your old environment think about that when you're in the middle of the city and, the really rough school and all that? Did that subject ever come up in anybody's mind, or was it just not thought about?
Questioning God or like faith?
Yeah, God and purpose in life and all that kind of stuff. Was it just something silly, or what did they think?
Everybody was, I call it, like I used to consider myself, and we'll get to that in a minute, a passive-aggressive Democrat. I think we were passive-aggressive Christians. Like, a lot of us, growing up in Texas, if you don't play football and go to church, people will be calling authorities on you and thinking there's something wrong. You need to check into a mental hospital. So, we went to church, and everybody believed in God. You know what I'm saying? If you didn't believe, you were crazy. So, some of my friends, we all often question when we look up at the stars and be like, man, there's something else out there, is the Bible real? We have these debates, but by and large, man, God was real, and anything else would have to be proven otherwise. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, so yeah.
I went into it believing that God was real, but I wanted to verify.
So, yeah, it's a good attitude to find out, because if it's real, you're going to know anyway. Yeah,
and if it ain't real, then I'm wasting my time, right? I need to find something else to figure out my purpose in life. But when I went to church, and I God was the more real to me than I ever imagined. You know what I'm saying? Like, I got baptized, and I got filled with God's Spirit, and I spoke in tongues. And some people may have their opinions about all that, but that changed my life.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter what anybody else's opinion about it is anyway. It's the significance of what it did to you.
Yeah, and the ramifications of what it did to me and what I read in the Bible. It confirmed the Bible to me that I was experiencing things that I read in the Bible. So that really, really set up a huge trajectory in my life as well, because God took away cursing and everything from me. Like, I went to church. I went to a concert before I actually got saved. This was like 2 days before I got baptized.
Yeah.
And I went to a concert. It's a Tatum concert. And I had all these rap CDs. I would listen to rap every day. And I remember at the end of the concert, the guy, he was also a pastor. He was like, some of y'all going to leave here the same way you came. And like, I made the decision in my heart. I said, I'm throwing away all my rap CDs.
Was the pastor at the concert?
Not my pastor. No, it was another guy. He was a pastor. He's a musician. His name is Todd Tribbett.
Okay.
He held a free concert, actually. You could give donations, but it was free. But I threw away, after that concert, what he said really stuck to me, and I threw away all my CDs.
Tell me again what he said.
He just simply said at the very end, he just talked to everybody. Everybody had a good time. He was like, you know what? but some of you guys are going to leave here the same way you came, meaning that no matter what I'm saying about God, no matter what I'm preaching to you guys, some of y'all are not going to hear what I'm saying. Some of y'all are going to go back and live a life of sin or do whatever you've been doing before you came here. But then he said some of y'all are going to be changed forever. And I really felt like I was ready for a change. And so I threw away all my CDs and never and I never looked back. And when I went to church, I got saved. I stopped cursing. I didn't even have the desire to curse. Even now, I don't curse unless I'm really mad, and I would be hard pressed to curse in front of anybody, but when I'm myself. Yeah. And that it changed me. Like, you know, I started changing, and race relations in my mind got better because every idea that I had anything to do with race was gone after I started reading the Bible and realizing that we're all God's children, and race means nothing. It's all about your spirit and who you are, and when you die, you know, how are you going to be remembered? That's what really matters. So that was pivotal for me. That was really impactful. Yeah.
Wow. So you almost became a different person, or you became who you always were and you didn't know.
Yeah. The cloak of all of that stress and violence and hatred and evilness and confusion and lust and everything. When I got baptized, it felt like it just fell off of me to where I was like a new person, to the point where whatever I was feeding myself was what I learned. All the other stuff went away. You know, like I would listen to positive music all the time, and I just felt positive. I had no residual effects of who I used to be. You know, I'd start pulling my pants up. You know, I sang in the choir. I got rid of my gold teeth. You know, my pastor, I used to wear earrings, and my pastor told me that I can't wear earrings if I'm going to be in the choir. I took the earrings out, and I ain't never put an earring in my ear ever since. And I would clean the church and did everything. You know, I think God just really revolutionized who I was. So that's another step that really helped my trajectory.
Wow, that's beautiful. So, yeah, the kind of music you listen to really says a lot about where your attention is, right?
Music is, people don't realize how impactful music is. I mean, think about it. They play music on an elevator. They play music in a dental office. Music on the movies. Music is kind of like the serum, or you could say I don't know whatever. If you were going, like, I think about it, I had an IV when I got hit by a car not too long ago. They put an IV in my arm. You know, the fluids that they put into your bloodstream is how music is to your soul. Yeah. Like the music it means more to people. It's like a lifeline, and people don't realize how impactful it is to them until they start to play with it, the dynamic of it. You know, you take 30 days and only listen to positive music, and you'll see how positive your life feel. Yeah. You know, you listen to cussing and talking about gang banging and killing people, you'll see how much aggression you feel. And, you know, I think that really was a thing that I learned as well.
Yeah, it's like a negative or positive hypnotic session, right? If you're told something over and over and over and over again, it starts echoing in your mind.
Yeah, and you can see it in the hood. Like if I ever have a chance to confront rappers, that's the argument that I'm going to confront them. Nobody, when they're doing drive-by shootings, they're not listening to Kenny Chesney. You know what I'm saying? They're probably listening to some other rappers like T.I. that's talking about killing and
says, gee, you're doing a great job. Keep going, right?
Yeah, keep going, keep killing. If you ain't killing, you ain't no real man. You know, like
exactly. So, and then there's peer pressure to support that, you know, that you're doing the right thing and all that too.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a whole dynamic, and I'm sure we'll get to it in a minute. But that's what my mission to do is to rectify this and try to help as many young people out of that deranged plantation as I can.
Well, you know, for 2 years you were still in school after all that changed. Yep. And then somehow you got into the police. What happened with that?
It's a very interesting story. So it didn't go straight there. So I was such a dynamic athlete that without even ever really playing at Arizona, I had an agent in 2010 and I was in the NFL draft.
Wow. Okay.
The Oakland Raiders told my agent they were going to draft me in the 6th or 7th round. This is with no film, just because I was a great athlete. Right. And they ended up passing on me. And this is around the same time my son was born. My son is 7 now. So this is around the the same time my son was born. And I had, like I said, I pursued the NFL, and it didn't work out for me. On my birthday was the draft day, and the day that they were supposed to draft me, and I had a draft party at my house. And,
oh my God!
And it was another dagger to the heart.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Oh man, you couldn't even imagine, man. That my agent told me I was getting drafted after all I've been through at Arizona, and my agent would never cut me a slack, man. He was hard on me since day one, telling me I wasn't gonna make it to the NFL simply because of the fact that what I happened in Arizona. He's like, don't be surprised if nobody call you. And one day he called me after church and told me that they want to draft me, and I was like, yeah, that was the greatest feeling and one of the greatest feelings of my life at the time. And then when they did, I cried, and I ripped my shirt and I cried, and it was really hard on me. It was hard. So what I did after that, my son was very young. He wasn't born yet. I think his mom was pregnant at the time. But what I did was I trained for the NFL for another year. My son was then born within that year. I met a mentor he made millions. He was $1 million. He made millions. He was worth millions. He mentored me. And it's a long story, and I'll be able to tell it another time. But he really helped me because of my son.
Now, when you had your son, were you married, or was this a girlfriend, or a temporary deal, or what was it? To be quite honest, we weren't to girlfriend boyfriend status at the time. We were really just hooking, hanging out and hooking up every now and again. Yeah. We really liked each other. But see, this is the thing, and I guess I'm not gonna give too much of the details of my personal life, but this is the thing, because I think some young people may benefit from this. The thing was that before I got saved, I didn't care about being promiscuous. You know what I'm saying? And right. I don't think me and her actually liked each other, but we were both athletes. She played volleyball and I played football, so we could never settle down and actually be in a relationship, because we both were busy during the season. So we would do little fun stuff together, but then we would mess around, and stuff that young people do. Yeah. And so, but when I got saved, I told her I couldn't do it anymore. Right? We couldn't have sex. We can talk, but we couldn't have sex. But we were on two different pages. She was kind of passive aggressively trying to deal with God, but I was going all in. I was like, man, I want to be. I don't want to have sex. I want to be celibate. And our relationship continued, which I think was a bad idea, because it led down to the path of us messing around again, even while I was saved. So we messed around probably, a few times after I was saved. As a young person, this is why I would tell any young man that's dealing with this, that you should have mentors, and you should avoid getting in these situations, because then they'll lead down a negative path. But I kept dating her, even though we were on two different pages, and we ended up sleeping together a few more times, and then she ended up getting pregnant. And that had a pretty significant effect on my church, obviously, because when she got pregnant, I had to tell my pastor that I'm having a kid out of wedlock, and I had to sit out the choir. It was really it was hell, to be honest. But it ended up working out. So it was just another huge learning experience in your life, basically. Oh my God! I mean, my whole life is a huge crash course. But it's hard to learn what you need to in one lifetime. In a way, it's good to have to go through all these really challenging situations to have a chance to learn what you need to. Yeah, and to be honest, I'm glad I went through them so that my son don't have to, so I can be able to give him some nuggets moving forward. And he's gonna make his mistakes, but he probably won't make the exact same ones I did. So, but moving forward, I had my son. We were still together. We got engaged. There was a gentleman who, his daughter also played volleyball, and he was a multimillionaire. And he decided to really help us, because we were two young people, didn't even have a job, and our parents could have helped us, but they live in other states. So he was really nice. He decided to mentor me, and he helped us in a huge way. I thank God for him every day that I wake up. And that man he's still involved in our lives, but he helped us out. But he mentored me, which was most important for me. And he told me, he said, I need you to write an X on a calendar for football. I want you to give your best shot, and when you feel like you've given your best shot, put an X on a calendar. And if you don't accomplish what you feel like you should have accomplished after you've given your best, then move on. Don't dwindle in football.
And so I tried out. I gave my hardest for a whole year. I trained. Of course, it was hard because my son was born and I had to stay at home and watch him while she finished volleyball and finished school. We had a limited time to work out. So, but I tried out again the following year in 2011, and that's when they had the NFL lockout. And the funny thing about my luck is that the NFL scouts wanted to see me try it again out in Arizona. I was living in Texas at the time. And when I flew out there, $400 flight, the day before the tryout, the morning of the tryout, the NFL officially locked out, which prevents agents from even looking at free agents.
So just for people that aren't familiar with that, tell them why they did that and what it meant.
And so to be honest, I can't remember exactly what the NFL was going through at the time, but they had gotten to a financial gridlock where kind of like the government, when they can't negotiate certain things, they have a lockout. So the NFL had a form of a lockout. Okay. And what that meant for the players is that if you were new and you were just being scouted fresh out of college, NFL scouts can actually can see you, and you can work within the confines of the NFL. But if you were a free agent or you had to be traded, all that stuff was completely put on hold. Right. So when they had the lockout, I was considered a free agent because I wasn't in the current draft. And so they couldn't even, it was against the NFL rule for them to even look at or participate or communicate with free agents at all. They couldn't even talk to me. Okay. And so the morning of, after a year of training and believing that I was going to have another shot, the morning of my tryout, NFL lockout was officially announced, and they turned me away at the gates of the tryout, and I cried. Wow. And so that was a tough blow to me, and I still pursued it a little bit after that. I got an invitation to a semi-professional team, the Omaha Nighthawks. They invited me to the mini camp, and that was the day I put the X on the calendar because I figured that I could, but my son was growing. And as a man, I said, I can't be chasing these football dreams because that's not putting food on the table. It's not giving me stability. So what I did was I applied for every job because we had moved back to Tucson. I applied for every job in the city of Tucson, and police was one of them. I never thought I wanted to be a police officer. Quite frankly, growing up, I didn't even like police officers. Right. And I didn't have a real reason, but I was growing up told that when I grew up, I was told that police officers are racist and they pull you over just because you're black. Kind of the same rhetoric that you hear today. I grew up in that rhetoric. So I didn't know, but my son, his well-being meant more to me than what I thought about a police officer. So funny story, man. And I'll tell this story because I tell the story every time I give this explanation. Funny thing is, I applied for all these jobs. Nobody called me back. Me and my son's mom was going through hard times. We broke up. We had an argument the night before via telephone about the engagement ring. I wanted it back so I could send it back to the place, get my money back. And she wanted to keep it. So, of course, we argued about it. And the next morning I wake up and I get a phone call and it says, hey, this is the Tucson Police Department. Maybe speak to Brandon. And instantly I thought that she called the police on me about an argument. And I'm like, she called the police on me about an argument? Like, this girl is crazy. Right. And I'm like, hello? And they're like, hey, you applied for the job. Like, are you still interested? And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm interested. So interestingly enough, I still wasn't convinced, and I was scared, and I didn't know nothing about policing. So I said, I need to do it like a ride along and see if I really want to do this, Yeah, that's a good idea. That's another thing that changed my life. I did a ride along with Officer Sean Payne. He will go down in my history. I will remember him for the rest of my life. Sean Payne is one of the greatest officers I ever met. He's one of the greatest people I've ever met. But at the time, I didn't know it. Obviously, I just drove up on him, in the parking lot of the substation, like, hey, can I do a ride along? And he accepted. Sean Payne happened to be a white officer. And, of course, at this time, I didn't think twice about it. So he took me on a ride along. He didn't think twice about race. None of that stuff even mattered. So he took me on a ride along, and for the first time in my life, I actually saw a hero. And I know it sounds cliche-ish and corny, but I had never seen a real-life hero until I rode with Sean Payne. And the reason I say that is because I watched that man as a human being. I watched him go from changing a flat tire to us getting a call about a guy that was committing suicide. And we drove 90 miles per hour virtually down city streets, literally missing death by a swerve here and a swerve there.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, my heart is about to pop out of my chest because I'm so afraid, and I'm also so nervous about how fast we driving. I ain't never even been that fast in a car.
Mm-hmm.
And we get there. He let me come up to the apartment complex with them, and I just stood off to the side. They kicked the door in. I was able to look in when they started going in, and the kid was literally, I saw him in the back of the kitchen cutting his wrist.
Wow.
They saved this kid. They detained him. All of this happened. I get back in the car with Sean. My heart is still at like 200, 250, and 250. It's probably 200 beats per second at this point. I'm still thinking about the drive over. And he was actually talking to me before the call came out. And when we got back in the car, he was like, "Hey, Brandon, so what were you telling me about your family?" I said, none of this happened.
Great.
And I looked at him like, "Are you serious? Like, I can't even think right now. I don't even know. You can't ask me nothing about my family. I forgot I had a family. I'm so terrified right now."
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind. And he's like, "Oh, man, it's nothing, man. We do this every day." And I'm like, "Every day? Like, dude, you are out here doing this every day?" I was completely blown away. And the funny thing is, I only rode with him a half a shift.
Wow.
And at the time I was working at Verizon Wireless, not even the real store. I was working at the premium retailer, and I hated it to death. But so then I fell in love with being a police officer. I said, you know what? I gotta be this hero. I gotta do this. This is who I am. You know, I really found my identity in doing that. And I pursued the career as a police officer, and I joined the police department in 2011. And I had an amazing career, and I would never change that for anything. And that was another pivotal point in my life, being a police officer.
So, how long did that last?
A little over 6 years. I was a police officer. While I was there, I was on a SWAT team. I was the spokesperson for the police department for a year. I was a field trainer. I trained new officers coming in. I was a general instructor. I taught at the academy. I taught new officers. What else did I do? I probably did a bunch of other stuff. But a very, very full career. You know, I never gotten a complaint. Never been seriously reprimanded, disciplined. I had a great career.
That sure changed an image in your mind of what police were like, I guess.
Oh my God. It was night and day. Like, everything changed about police. When I rode with Sean, everything changed. Yeah. And then it went to some next level stuff when I actually was a police in the car, driving around, arresting people. I remember the first time I had to try to apprehend a criminal via doing a traffic stop. I'll never forget this. We were driving, and the guy was coming the opposite direction, and I was getting trained, because like when you first come out the academy, you have a field trainer. And so I get to the light, and he like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm about to do a U-turn at the light." He was like, "Dude, you are a police officer now. Do a U-turn in the middle of the street. This is a suspect. You know, you can do a U-turn." And I'm like, that's how green I was. I'm like, I'm following the traffic laws. But obviously, police officers are exempt in certain circumstances. But, I do a U-turn for the first time in the middle of the street. I remember making my first arrest thinking, like, this is real. Like, these are real people. Like, this is not a staged event. Like, these people can be nice, or they can kill you.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, just how many lives I saved. Physically saving lives. Like, I pulled one girl off of a bridge. She was getting ready to jump to her death at Miracle Mile and I-10. She was going to jump off the bridge onto the railroad tracks. And she was one of those people that really was going to kill herself. Like, other people will call us and say, "Oh, I'm going to kill myself." They kind of want you to know, and they want a little bit of attention. Yeah. Most of them. But this girl didn't even call. Somebody called and said she was hanging off of the bridge. And
so how did you get her off without her going off over the end?
She was sitting with her butt on the bridge, and her legs were dangling off.
Yeah.
And she was contemplating the jump. You know, she was at that moment where she was like, "Okay, I'm gonna jump or not." We got the call. I happened to be the only officer in the area at the time, and I immediately responded. Thank God I was on the right side of the freeway, where I was coming up to the ramp where she really couldn't see me pull up in the car. So I pulled up and I parked a good distance off, and I walked up. And I wanted to be stealthy enough because she was pretty focused on looking down. So I walk up behind her at an angle to where I could snatch her quick enough where she wouldn't fall and I wouldn't fall to my death with her.
Right.
Well, I was able to get real close to her, and man, I tell you what, I had to make a decision, and I said, I'm gonna go for it. She may jump, but I gotta make a decision. If I wait around, or if she hear me, she may just go ahead and jump. And I cannot live with watching this girl hit the ground from 50 feet. I don't know how high that thing was. And so I got close enough to her, and I just went for it, man. I grabbed her. And I just lunged, grabbed her, and leaned back over to the freeway. And I ended up pulling her over, and I gave her a hug, and I said it's gonna be okay. And I took her to the crisis center, which is where we can take people that are dealing with mental problems at the time, whether it's suicide, homicidal, or whatever. So I mean, and I can name numerous situations. So, but
well, you can tell a little bit more, because this is like a ride along with everybody that's listening right now.
Yeah, I mean, I remember talking a woman down. She had a knife in her hand. That was one of my most memorable moments. I mean, I almost got stabbed to death, but we had a call of a female who wanted to kill herself, and she had a knife, and she was going to off herself. So this call necessitated at least 8 officers, because we wanted to make sure we contained the area and evacuate people if we needed to. So we got there. There was several officers there. I happened to be crisis intervention trained, which means that I had the certification to try to negotiate and talk to people who are in crisis, namely people who would commit suicide. Right. So I happened to be the training guy, so I knocked on the door. We had this whole tactical plan. We had people with less lethal behind me, but I knocked on the door initially. She didn't answer. I walked to the side of the building, which was probably about 20 feet. I walked to the side of the building to check and see if she wasn't like on the side of the building, and we weren't paying attention. Right. By the time I turned around and looked back at her door, she had come out the door with the knife in her hand. And I'm probably about 12 feet from her. And I drew my gun on her, and I said, ma'am, drop the knife. Drop the knife. And my officers literally had to pull me back, because I didn't realize how close she was. But I didn't want to kill her, you know? And I just kept pleading with her. Drop the knife, man. We don't want to hurt you. You know, please, you don't want to do this. And I was using the training that I had gotten. And after talking to her for about 8 minutes, I guess, you know, what I was saying to her, you know, the God in me and the training that I had, what I was saying to her, she dropped the knife. And that was one of the greatest moments of my life, because if she ran at us, we would have had to take lethal force against her. And if she would have pursued me while I was that close to her, I would have had to shoot and kill her. And that was a great moment, watching her drop the knife. And she sat down at the chair. We were able to kick the knife away, and that was a great moment. And we also had the trauma, you know, those were good moments. Saving lives were good moments, but the trauma was often, you know, that gets often overlooked with police officers too, because I remember 2 situations that I will never forget. You know, I had a guy who was a security guard driving to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, a young college kid drunk off his butt, hit him head on and killed him. Wow. And he literally died seconds before we got there. He was crushed down in the car. The only thing that was hanging out was his torso and his face. And so I could obviously check his pulse and realize he died. And the kid, he was okay. He just scratched his knee. He was so drunk, he was bragging about how many shots he took before he got in the car and drove. He didn't realize he had killed this guy. Wow. And the hardest part was when I took his wallet out to try to identify him, and I saw his family in his wallet. And I kept his wallet in my locker longer than I should have. It was slightly on accident, but you know, I had to return his wallet, but I had left it in my locker, and every day before I returned, it reminded me of that man's family. You know, and they thought he was at work, and they didn't even know, although I knew, that their dad would never come home over a senseless act like that, and it destroyed. It really hurt me. You know, I was sad about that for a while. And then another more serious one that we had was the gang violence. We had a drug deal gone bad in a hard neighborhood where I patrolled, and the call came out that it was a guy who was walking down the street with a gun in his hand. That's how the call came out. And for your viewers, when the call comes out, it's typically never what the caller said it is. It's always, if it sounds weird, it's probably way worse. If it sounds really bad, it's probably not that bad. So this situation was really bizarre. A man walking down the street with a gun. We were like, okay, you know, what is he doing with the gun? It's not illegal to have a gun in Arizona, open carry, concealed carry. So that came out, and so we had our rifles, we set up a contingent team so we can approach this guy just in case he a killer or something,
Mm-hmm.
and get another call in and say that same guy is now parked in the front in front of their house. The caller says, this guy's now parked in front of our house with a loaded gun. And we were like, how do they know he has a loaded gun unless they touching him, unless they right next to him? So we say, hey, now we got to act, man. This guy's in front of the house. Like, we got to really act. So we come around the corner and we see a truck with all 4 doors open. And it's weird. We like, why is this truck canted in the middle of the street in front of a house with all 4 doors open? So we think it's probably a stolen vehicle. We get to the car, and then we notice there's a guy that has been shot multiple times, and he's in the driver's seat, and he's laying back with his head up, kind of. If you ever seen anybody that was dead, he looked dead. He had his mouth open. He was kind of gasping a little bit, which is like the sympathetic reflex.
Yeah.
But he had been obviously shot multiple times. We couldn't see where he was shot initially because he was shot from the opposite side that we were on. But he was laying back in the chair with coagulated blood on his neck. And so he had looked like he'd been sitting there for a while.
Right.
So myself, I'm pretty big. I'm about 6'2", 220, and another officer who was a K-9 officer at the time. He was the other guy. He was about 6'4". We were the 2 biggest guys, and we were tasked with rescuing this guy. So when we go around to the other side of the car, we noticed he had been shot a few times in the leg, and he had got shot in the head where where it kind of grazed. It kind of went through his head, but not through and through. And it knocked his skull. He had skull pieces that came out. His brain was exposed, and he had brain matter on the seat behind him. But he was still gasping. So when somebody's doing that, we have to give an effort to rescue them.
Right.
I'll never forget this. We had to try to pull him out of the car, and he was about 250, 260.
Mm-hmm.
And a person who's limp, from being pretty much
they're
dead.
heavier. I know.
They're heavier, and they're so malleable that you can't grab them. So he pretty much got all of his clothes while we were grabbing him, trying to get a grip on him. He's covered in blood. We got gloves on, so we can't grab his body. While he was laying on the ground, his blood soaked in my shoes. I had blood all over my uniform. And, the fire department, they have to park, in a safe distance from the scene because it's not technically secure. So they parked about a half a block away, but they gave us the gurney. None of us knew how to let the gurney down. It was an electronic gurney, but we didn't know how to let it down. So the gurney is sitting about 3 feet in the air. And I'm tasked with having to get this guy on this gurney.
Wow.
And run him to rescue because we still don't know where the shooter's at. And I'll never forget this, man. He was so bloody we could not hold him. We had to use the dog leash to wrap it around his upper body to at least get enough leverage to pick him up.
Yeah.
So with my football background and strength and everything, I was able, after multiple attempts and literally I was desperate for my life to save this guy. I literally was able to pick his upper body up, crouch it on my knee, and throw his upper body. I couldn't even get his legs. I threw.
What did you have the other guy helping you, the K-9?
Yeah, he was helping at the feet, but he couldn't really get to the top.
Okay.
So I had the task of really doing the top. He tried to get the feet, but at the time, I had to strap him with the dog leash, and I had to do his whole upper body by myself.
Right.
The other officer had to try to get his legs, so we could only throw his upper body on top of the gurney. And I'll never forget this. When I threw him, it jerked his head forward, and blood and a little bit of brain hit me right in the face. It just cut my face. And I had to run a half a block with this guy on a gurney, halfway on the gurney, not even knowing if people are still going to shoot and kill us. I remember it was so traumatic. I had to go home. I had to biohazard my uniform. They let me go home, and I took a shower and my next call coming back to work, because I ended up going back to work after I took a shower. Mm-hmm. My next call was a grandmother that had got some jewelry stolen in a burglary. You know what I'm saying? And I just remember zoning out, taking her police report, thinking I cannot believe what I just did right now.
Right.
And this lady had no idea what I just saw. So
you never found out where the guy who was shooting was, right? Well,
we didn't find it at the time. We did an investigation. We ended up, at the time, we didn't even know what happened. We were like, this guy clearly got shot to death. We don't know what happened. The caller clearly was not cooperating because this guy had gotten shot in front of their house, and they didn't tell us he got shot. And they were anti-police, so they didn't even tell us what happened.
Right.
So what they was doing was a caller reported the guy who shot him and was running away from the scene.
And
they reported it was another person with a bag of money that was running too. They reported that, and we were like, it was so confusing that they didn't tell us that there was a drug deal that went bad and there was a shootout in front of their house.
Okay, so right. They left a few details out.
They left a few details. Thank God that all three of them who were involved in this, the two killers and the dead person, they had went out to eat at a restaurant. They met up at a restaurant that had surveillance footage. That was right down the street. So we were able to see all three people who were involved. We were able to do DNA. We did everything, and I think we ended up identifying the people who were involved.
Okay.
But I mean, I'll never forget that. And with those experiences, many others, you know, we had happy ones and things that's even worse than that I don't even want to say on the air.
Mm-hmm.
But that made me respect police officers so much more. Like it is so much bigger. And it's so much more to go along with this than just simply somebody looking at a person's race. I can say this as sure as I'm sitting here today. Racism in the police department is very rare. It's almost impossible to be racist on a police department. And it's almost impossible to exercise racism on a police department. And a lot of people who are not cops don't realize that. And I did when I became a cop.
Yeah, because there's real issues going on. You don't have time to fool around with stuff that doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, you can't, and you can't pick who you serve. Like the girl that I rescued was Asian girl, and you know the one I pulled off. The lady that had the knife was a white lady. The guy that got shot to death was a Hispanic man. Like you don't get a chance to say, oh, we're going to a black person. No, I don't want to go to that call. Like you got to go and you got to risk your life for these people. Like even people you don't know. Like if you were racist, you got to be willing to die for somebody that you don't like. And police officers die every day for people they probably don't like. People that are out here committing crimes and that really are living a life of violence. You end up dying because you're trying to save them. You know,
right.
Most police officers die in vehicular accidents. They die more in car accidents than they do by being shot by other people. Right. But that's in response to emergency calls and stuff for people you don't even know. Like it's just impossible to be racist, especially a white officer in an all-black neighborhood. It's literally impossible to be racist because everybody you serve is black.
Right, and you figure out pretty soon that you can't stereotype people by their color, right?
Right, because you take more calls than shooting people. Shooting people inevitably is rare. And so, and then for people to think that these cops are racist, they're being racist against cops and white and black people. Because if you think that white officers are so afraid of these black people, that's like thinking every black person in the black neighborhood is criminals. Like these officers are going to a grandmother who got her car stolen, and they're going to a little kid who won't do what he's supposed to do at home or fight at school or somebody who is lost. They go into all these different calls and dealing with so many different black people that like there's no way that they're afraid of black people for some reason.
Right.
You know?
And they'd figure out pretty fast. One of the questions that came up while you were telling the story, the girl that came out with the knife, you know, out the front door, and you wanted her to drop the knife, and it took, you thought, 8 minutes or so for her to do that. If she had run at you, you said you might have had to kill her, you know, because for self-defense. Wouldn't there be a way to do it without killing her if she did that?
You said, well, in the position I was in, I would have had to kill her.
Why?
Well, I'm not saying I would have had to kill her. So let me rephrase that. She may have died based on the level of force that I used.
Yeah.
You only shoot a person in the because I would shoot her until she dropped the knife. But if you take 2 or 3 rounds in the chest, like you're probably not gonna make it.
Right. No, I agree. But would you have to shoot her in the chest if in that situation?
Yeah, I would have.
Because she might not stop otherwise, I guess. Right?
Yeah. It's not like the movies, man. You know, in the movies, they shoot them and they fly in the air and they die.
They shoot the blade of the knife in the movies, you know.
Yeah.
No problem.
In real life, if a person is high on drugs or something, you could shoot them 5 or 6 times and they'll still stab you to death.
Yeah.
If you don't hit anything vital, you can, I've heard stories of officers shoot. They shot a guy on meth. They shot him 8 times and he still fought the officers. They still couldn't detain him. At like 10 minutes after he got shot 8 times. So if you hiding up on drugs, man, them shots ain't gonna really do nothing for you. But I'm saying just in that position that I was in, I would have had to shoot her. But when they finally pulled me back, I didn't have to shoot her.
Because of the distance, you mean? Because
of the distance, and everybody else had less lethal munitions. Some guys had flex batons and everything else. I'm just saying I would have had to shoot her because me and her were like...
It's all you had.
we had 12 feet from each other. Like any lunge with that knife, she could.
Oh yeah. And I don't think the idea of disarming somebody with a knife hand to hand is realistic at all.
Oh no, it will never happen. Did that person stab through your hand?
Yeah.
I mean, depending on how rugged they are, man. In the movies, it works.
Exactly.
Man, if I knew jujitsu or if I knew some type of kung fu, maybe I can give that an attempt. But what if she's?
I don't think it's guaranteed even then. Yeah.
What if she's home and she's superhuman strong? Because when you high on these drugs like meth or like you high on K2 and spice, you're superhuman. I mean, I have a story about fighting a guy on that. I mean, but you're a superhuman, man. You could take bullets. So you think you're gonna do, Bruce Lee moves and knock a knife out somebody can?
No, not a good idea.
All they gotta do is get one shot on your neck, hit the jugular, and you probably ain't never see your family again. So
yeah, exactly.
It's not worth it. And by law, we're protected and using deadly force if necessary.
Right. No, I really like the idea of giving people, an insight into what it's like from the policeman's point of view, because most people don't get to do the ride along that you did, and it's just super valuable experience, I think.
Yeah, I mean, policing was one of the greatest things that ever happened to me, and it's a part of my quote unquote red pill moment when you speaking of politics.
How did you get into the SWAT aspect of it?
Well, because I was an athlete, I always wanted to be, my athletic ability kind of led me in that direction, and I always wanted to serve in the military too.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like an opportunity for me to be able to be tactically sound. And it was cool to be on a SWAT team. Every young person I want to be on a SWAT team.
Yeah.
So it was my ability to become the best tactical officer that I could be, to be the best physical fitness that I could have been in, and also be a part of an elite team that most people would never probably have a chance to do. So, and I happen to be a really good shooter, although I never shot a gun before the police academy. Just so happened the training that they gave us, if you pay attention to the training, you can really be effective. I was perfect handgun, perfect rifle in qualification. So I ended up being a pretty good shot too.
Wow. And you took time to keep yourself in good shape.
Oh yeah, you had to. I mean, you have a strict guidelines on the SWAT team. You had to be in top shape, and it helped you as a police officer, because some police officers, to be honest, you can, after the academy, if you want to get fat and sloppy, you can get fat and sloppy.
Yeah.
So, but on a SWAT team, you had to be the elite. So it saved your life today.
So how come you stopped after 6 years? What happened with that?
Oh, well, so I had made a video in 2015, or right when Trump had a rally in Tucson. All I did was I made a video about my experience at a Donald Trump rally. That's all. Okay. Well, let me say this. Let me go back, because it's kind of an important backstory.
Yeah.
So when Barack Obama started coming out against police officers around the time of Michael Brown,
right?
That's when I started really feeling some type of way about Democrats and Barack Obama. Because I had voted all the way up until this point. I had supported Barack Obama, and I consider myself a Democrat. And I voted for him during that time. So when he started really bashing police, and keep in mind, all my friends were like, "Brandon, I don't know why you're a Democrat. You're more of a conservative than you are of a liberal. So I don't know why you're a Democrat." But all of that brushed off my shoulder, because I was born and raised a Democrat, and I thought I was right. So
okay.
So with that being said, I had all these influences from my other friends already telling me that Barack Obama is a certain way, and that if I found out the truth about Barack Obama, I wouldn't like him. All this stuff they were telling me. So then when he started bashing police officers and sending people to Michael Brown's funeral and saying police are acting stupidly when he had no information, I saw his attacks on police, and I saw the residual effect in the streets where people were challenging us more based on what he was saying, and he could care less. And it really opened my eyes to really feeling disenfranchised by the Democratic Party, and everybody else was doubling down on these racist cops. And I really had enough, and I really went back to investigate Barack Obama and what I really thought, and I realized that, I am more of a conservative, and I really need to start looking at the other party. And so I'm at the point where I'm like, I'm going to look at the Republican Party, which historically I've never done before. I'm going to see who they got, because I want to be an active voter. I want to be involved in what happens in this country. And
right.
So I was considering Republican candidates at this time. So Ben Carson was my favorite at the time. I thought he was brilliant. I mean, he was an outsider. I mean, I loved his policies and stuff that he would articulate, but he just didn't have enough energy, and he dropped out. You know, he just wasn't inspiring enough. So then he endorsed President Donald Trump. So I still wasn't convinced about Trump. I mean, I thought it was a joke. You know, he's a celebrity. He wasn't going to be the president. Yeah. Time. I never thought he was a bad person. I just thought that he playing the game. You know, he playing the game with everybody and showing everybody that, like, look, man, I could beat y'all chumps. I ain't going to want to be president, but I could try it and beat y'all.
Yeah.
But he started getting momentum, you know, and Ben Carson endorsed him. And I was like, maybe I need to really check this guy out. And all I had heard on the news was that people at his rallies are racist. Donald Trump is a racist. Like, so I said, you know what? He coming to my city, and I was working a midnight shift. I was working a midnight shift at the time, so I didn't even go to sleep. I worked from 9 o'clock at night to 7 in the morning, and I stayed up and I went to his rally.
Wow. Okay.
And I was like, I'm gonna go see and rule this guy out. You know, let me see who he is. Let me see who this guy really is. If he racist, I'm gonna know about it. If people are throwing black people out of his rallies just because they black, then I'll be able to make a decision and say I ain't gonna vote for this guy.
Yeah, that's the kind of story that was going around, actually.
So when I went, I was completely taken aback. Like, the protesters were violent and crazy, and people in the Trump rally were nice and kind, and it was such a serene environment. Everybody was like a big family. I mean, it was beautiful, man. It was black people, white people. It was a great time, and I wasn't even political. And I was like, this is cool. And then, of course, Donald Trump come out, you know, to stage like he in the WWE. You know what I'm saying? They had this music and lights. I mean, it was a cool little thing, man. He this billionaire comes out and gives a speech of unity, and it resonated with a lot of stuff that I believed. And then also he was kind. He didn't say anything inflammatory. Nothing that was racist. Like, it was only these protesters that were yelling and screaming in front of people's kids and threatening people. And I mean, it was the protesters, and they actually blocked the entrance so people couldn't get in. People couldn't get out.
Right.
It was such a terrible thing that what those protesters were doing. So all I did when I got home was I said, I had never made a video before. I normally just write out stuff that I think. Said, you know what? I'm gonna make a video because I ain't got time to type. I'm gonna spell something wrong, as sleepy as I am. So I made a video, and I just told the truth about how I felt. Downloaded the video, and it went viral. Wow! It went viral. Donald Trump shared it on his page.
Oh man, that's wonderful.
And so a lot of stuff happened. And
of course, if you had just watched the television account of that rally, they probably would have said that he was up there saying he hates everybody who's with dark skin.
And you know what? You know, I'm gonna tell you this. It kind of backfired on him, but there was a black guy in the audience who was a military guy, and one of the protesters was holding a sign disrespecting the military, and one of the other protesters was wearing a Ku Klux Klan hoodie. And they walked by that guy, and he must have said something to him, and that guy he had enough, so he beat the guy up. The black guy beat up one of the white protesters. Yeah, and they didn't even they talked about it a little bit, but they made it a point to point out that there was a white Trump guy who was, and the guy was calm and collected the whole time. These protesters acting so much of a fool. He held it in all the way to the end, and all he did was they started waving this Nazi flag in front of him, and he grabbed the flag and threw it over the balcony. He just threw it. He grabbed it, balled it up, and threw it over the balcony. And they couldn't help but to call that man all kinds of racist. And then they didn't say nothing about the protesters on the news. I watched it with my own eyes, local and national news. I watched it with my own eyes. They didn't even tell. I was back there with the camera people because I was with a couple guys from the SWAT team. I was off duty, but I was hanging out with them. And the media, the protesters blocked the entrance, so they had to sneak everybody out like a backdoor emergency exit. The media had to get snuck out the back door, and they never said anything about it. Yeah. All they could say is that Donald Trump, there was more controversy at his rallies. You know, it was such a disingenuous thing. I was so shocked. That was the first time I realized that there was such thing as fake news, and I was so shocked. I make it feel. In other words, they were suggesting it was his fault that there was. They were suggesting that because of his rhetoric and because of his followers that they're acting up, and that man. I mean, he even had a disclaimer at the beginning telling people don't get into physical altercations. If you have a protester around you, just yell Trump, 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 or USA, USA, USA. Hold up the American flag, and the security will remove those people. By law, it was a private event, and Donald Trump reserved the right to remove anybody for any reason he wanted to, because he rented the space. It was a private event.
Yeah,
and
good.
Donald Trump didn't even really go hard on those people. He had people heckling him behind him, and he didn't even pay attention to him until the last minute. He finally like looked back at him and was like, I mean, he had to stop his speech like 10 times because they were like Unabombers. You know, they were dressed in Trump stuff, and they'll take their shirts off and they'll yell and scream and cuss everybody out and tell people that they're going to hell. And it was terrible. It was terrible, man. It was so terrible. But Trump, you know, he was nice. He shared my video, and it went viral. And I didn't even know what viral was. And like people were, I didn't Breitbart was. I didn't even know what Breitbart was. And people were like, oh, they shared it to you on Breitbart. And I'm like, okay. Like, he's like, oh, Breitbart is like the top conservative. Like, dude, I don't know nothing about politics at this point, man. You know, so I was very fresh in it, and the video went viral, had over several million views, and Donald Trump actually sent me a gift, you know. He just sent some hats and stuff and some shirts. I don't know, you know, obviously he didn't directly send it, but his campaign sent it to me. It was nice. It was a nice gesture, you know. So he was nothing but authentic, and I say I fell in love with his policies, and I fell in love with the concept of having somebody like him represent me in this country, and you know, that kind of led me on the political path. Right.
So at that time, you were still working for the police department, right?
Yeah, I was still a police officer. I remained a police officer for maybe another year. Mm-hmm. And I had made a couple other videos that went viral. They were million-view videos. And at this point on the police department, I was the social media guy. You know, everybody was laughing because I was the guy that would make viral videos. So that was all that I expected, just to make viral videos and try to monetize it if I could and remain a police officer. Yeah. But there was ideas floating around, people that I knew. I did a little work for a guy named Todd that he had the Tea Party website or whatever. I did a little work with him as a police officer. But there was stuff floating around that other people wanted to take me and have me do stuff with them full time. But that wasn't something that I knew about at the time. So long story short, when Colin Kaepernick took a knee for the national anthem the second season, I had enough. And I wasn't even going to make the video, but I ended up making it in my garage while my dad and my mom was taking a nap at my house. They came and visit me. And that video had 70 million plus views. Wow. It went crazy on YouTube, and I got blown up. I was on all the media, and a company offered to give me a position full time to do media for them out here in Anthem, where I live at. It's in North Scottsdale, pretty much, where I live at. And I believe that historically, you know, from the gift that God has given me, I felt like that God was pushing me in a direction where speaking and doing things like that would be the next step in me improving the world and doing great things. And I thought that God wanted me to transition. So I took the job offer. You know, they paid me enough to lead a police department. I can tell you this, they paid me about $20,000 plus more than I made on the police department just to talk on YouTube, you know? So it was, and then I was safe. I didn't have to worry about dying every day. So it was kind of enticing to take that out.
Yeah, it has some advantages for sure.
And our chief was a raging liberal lunatic, and I hated his guts, not as a person, but I hated his politics. Yeah. He was terrible, and what he was doing to the police department was wrong. We were losing officers through attrition and through people just flat out leaving the department, transferring. We didn't have enough officers to take calls. Like, he was just decimating the police department. I felt like that was I wanted to quit, to be honest, but I wasn't, because I had to feed my family. That's how bad it got. So this kind of happened at a really good time for me. And I just decided to do other things, man. I miss it to death, man. I wish I could get in a patrol car and be a hero in that capacity again. But I think God is leading me down another path.
Yeah, it's time for the next chapter. Yeah. So where did you go to work? What happened?
So Liftable Media hired me as the spokesperson for a branch of their media called Conservative Tribune. Mm-hmm. So I was the spokesperson for Conservative Tribune, and I did that for about 6 months. Okay. Facebook algorithms created an environment where it was better for me to try to either go on my own or find somewhere else to work. Not because of the company at all. It's just because Facebook throttled us so much that it was like, you know, it didn't work. The situation didn't work out for either one of us anymore. So we had to pretty much part ways. And after that, I started doing media on my own. I mean, I had hundreds of thousands of followers on my platforms. So I did it on my own for about 2 months. Me and Candace Owens at the time, we were cool. We would talk to each other every now and again. And, you know, she believed in me. You know, she would spread my name around. And then she told Kirk for Turning Point USA that I'd be a perfect person to fill the position for the director of urban engagement. I mean, obviously, Charlie did his research on me. He watched my videos. Me and him had a brief conversation, and they like, dude, you're the perfect person for this job. And then that's what I'm doing now. Yeah,
pretty neat. So that's your full-time occupation at the moment, right? As a director there.
Yeah, my primary full-time occupation. Obviously, I do other stuff, like I do speeches. I speak. You know, people want to book me to speak in a private capacity. I do that. I do stuff on social media. But my primary job right now is to be the director of urban engagement. And we're working on a whole bunch of stuff, man. Working on so much stuff that's going to change the world.
Okay, so now why don't you tell us about that organization and what it's doing and what you're doing with it?
So Turning Point USA was founded by Charlie Kirk. I forget how many years ago, maybe about 5 years ago or so. When they first started out, I mean, it had like 9 employees. Charlie Kirk is a young man. He started when he was like, I think 17 when he started the company or started the profit. And, you know, the goals and motives for Turning Point USA as a nonprofit is to educate young people within the age group of 18 to about 26, 28 years old, to educate them on conservative values, educate them on the difference between conservatism and socialism. You know, talking about the problems with big government, like different things like that we would utilize as an educational piece, kind of like the ABC entry level for people to get involved in the politics and for them to understand where they stand in this world and what values that they want to represent. And we do that on college campuses all around the country. We have summits that we do all around the country with multiple different topics. So that's pretty much our primary focus. I still think the nonprofit is very new in its, still in its inception, to be quite honest. And I think we got a lot of greater things to do, and we're expanding a lot. And so that's pretty much the gist of what we do.
Okay, so just for people that might not be clear or be suffering from various stereotypes about what those values are, and they think, oh, conservatives, I heard on TV that they're racist and they hate everybody who's, not in agreement with them, and they don't like women very much, and they're just really bad people, and they also hate the environment, and what else? Stuff like that,
Yeah, I think it's quite funny because I think if somebody would have asked me this question and talked about conservatives a long time ago, I probably would have been one of those people who was misinformed, who may have made those statements. But after
they also want to blow up the world and have wars all over the place.
Yeah, and I think that's very sad that people will project that on another person whom they haven't even met. And to think that people exist like that in this country is probably a little scary, especially when you think they exist on a mass level like that. But the truth and the reality is that some people believe in minimal amount of government. Some people don't believe in socialism. Some people believe that we have freedoms and we have independence and we have the freedom of free market. And we think that this country is one of the only countries that give us the freedom that if you work hard, you can be somebody in life. Right. And we don't, the conservative side don't believe that if you work hard, you can help somebody else be someone in life and you never become nothing. And y'all all are on the same playing field when they don't even put in the work and they just living off of your success. Most conservatives don't believe in that principle. And I think most people don't believe in that principle if it's applied to their life consistently. We believe in lower taxes. We don't believe in being taxed heavily. That don't mean that we don't care about people. We just want.
Yeah, and that's a typical thing that's said, is that the conservatives don't care about the poor people and they just let them all starve to death.
Yeah, it's funny because we just want poor people to have opportunities and not give them handouts. Like the concept of you can lead a man. You say, to teach a man how to fish. You can give a man a fish, but if you teach him how to fish, he'll feed his family for the rest of his life. And our concept is that we don't want to give you a fish. We want to teach you how to fish. Yeah. And we don't want the government to baby you. We want to give you opportunities in a free market so you can become whatever you want to become. And I think that that's the valuable difference. But I'll tell anybody that think that is that it's just not. It's just fundamentally not true. I'm consider myself a conservative. I believe in all those conservative values. For the most part, I believe in most of them conservative values. I can't think of one off the top that I don't agree with. But I love my family. I actively do things for the poor. I care about everybody that's walking the planet Earth. I love every single soul. I may not agree with gay marriage, but I love gay people. And I would never go and break up a wedding and protest against a person who want to marry somebody they love. My personal opinion is that that's not in line with what God wants. But I have people that are my friends that are gay. I know people transgender that I love, and that's all that matters. So I think that it's a huge misconception. I want those people to be just as happy as I want my children to be happy. And I think that that's the misconception. We don't want war, but we don't want to be being killed and dominated by another superpower in the world, and then be subject to dictatorship or socialism. So we want to be strong and firm the same way we really want to be strong and firm in their own household. And I think if people would narrow down the ideology and say, how do you run your household? Well, you run your household the way that you probably want the government to be run. You don't want, you want to protect your household. You want to be strong. You probably, if you're smart and you know anything about law enforcement and everything, you probably carry a gun at your house to protect your family. If you don't work, your family don't eat. And that's just the way it is. You're not gonna feel sorry for a man sitting on the corner begging every day when he can go get a job, and you're gonna take food out of your family's mouth to go give it to a man on the corner who don't want to work for what he got. You're not gonna do that in your house. So why should we expect that from the government? And if people just sit down and leave the rhetoric alone and actually sit face to face with people, because I tell you what, people on the right have those preconceived ideas about people on the left as well. Not everybody on the left is a raging, crazy liberal. I think there's people on the left who probably just want the same thing as people on the right. But the people at the top, they have to make sure we stay divided. Because I met a girl who works for a completely liberal organization who carries. I don't want to blast her organization because they probably fire her if they knew that she had this conversation with me. But it's an organization that's completely liberal, and and mine and her conversation is that we sat down in my living room because I met her through another person. Me and her sat down in the living room, and she agreed with everything I said. She agreed with everything I said as far as fiscal conservatism. She agreed with everything I said as far as policy. She agreed with Donald Trump. She did not like Barack Obama. She felt like the Democrats were brainwashing African-American voters. I mean, me and her, if you set us down, we could debate against anybody on the left as a tandem. And if I had never, because the funny thing is, when my friend was introducing me to her, she warned both of us, like, hey, Brandon is like super conservative, like pro-America, pro-Trump. And she told me, like, hey, my friend is like super liberal. Like, she go to raves and she, kind of like wearing yoga pants all day. Like, she really she's really liberal. And I'm like, I ain't mad at her. She can come to my house and hang out. When she start talking crazy, then I'm gonna have to defend my beliefs. But me and the girl end up being 100% on the same page. Wow. And, but see, if we didn't have that, if we never met in the middle, had that person that bridged us together, and we were like, if I looked at the name of her organization, she looked at the name of mine, we probably would never talk to each other. And so that's the dangerous part, that I think that obviously people that have a vested interest in keeping us divided, they don't want that to be apparent on both sides. Right. I think at Turning Point, we want to be the neutral ground where we're not trying to force you into doing nothing. We're not forcing you into capitalism. What we're going to do is going to force you to think about your thoughts, and we're going to give you all the information you need to educate yourself, that you can make the most educated decision at the end of the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the country was started with the idea of individual freedom. And the thing about that is that if it really happens, it's not happening perfectly right now, but if it were really happening, then that leads to incredible prosperity. And when that goes on, there's so much private charity that happens spontaneously. There's nobody starving.
Right.
And government doesn't have to do it. I think what it comes down to, anybody that really analyzes it, is that you need freedom in a country to have prosperity. And in order to do that, you can't be controlled by a central bank. You know, if you really start analyzing it, a lot of the wealth of the country is being siphoned off to the so-called Federal Reserve, which is a private bank. And if that were ever understood and stopped, there would be so much additional prosperity. It would just be flooding everywhere. So hopefully we'll get to that point. But I think these labels, like, you know, you have to choose one label like a football team, like liberal or conservative or Democrat or Republican or, you know, black or white or one religion or another, and you're supposed to fight everybody who's not on your team.
And at Turning Point, it is my mission to, and I think the mission of all of us is to end this BS. You know, I think that it's not just about politics. It's about you as a person. Like, where do you want to see your country? Where do you want to raise your kids? Presidents come and go. You know, Donald Trump is going to do 8 years, and I'm pretty confident in saying that the next term is going to be easier victory than the first one. But Trump is going to do 8 years, and then, you know, he's going to be gone. So people need to stop focusing on their emotions surrounding a president or a political identity. We need to focus on, what do you believe as a person? You don't have to label yourself conservative or not. I mean, I call myself conservative so people can get the gist of what I believe if they want to have a starting point. But I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm not. I don't abide by either one of those. I will never. I'm who I am, and I have my own principles. And it just so happened that President Donald Trump ran as a Republican. So I obviously have to register as a Republican to vote in the primary. If he ran as a Democrat, I'd voted for him as a Democrat. So I don't like to use those principles. I like to use what do I want to see this country go? And I'm flexible in saying that, hey, maybe this is not traditional and I believe something different. When you don't bound yourself by labels, you're able to be more flexible and open-minded. But so far, man, everything that we preach at Turning Point USA is everything that I believe. And if people want to call that the far right, which I think is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard, then so be it. Maybe they need to move a little bit more to the right.
Well, I mean, the media is really encouraging people to think that way, right?
Yeah, they because they need to. They have to. I'm telling you, if they don't do something, if they don't do some brainwashing and some manipulation, there's political powers that will never, ever see a political position again. I will make this statement, and I'm saying it as sure as I'm sitting here alive as a man in America. When we break this movement out, and if we can successfully get people thinking, one of the primary things is getting African Americans on par with everybody else that typically vote in a balanced perspective, because African Americans are voting in a very disproportionate way. If we can get African Americans to get the information that they need and understand where they actually stand versus where they've been brainwashed to tell them that they stand, myself was included, there's a political party, the left, they won't be able to ever hold the office again. I just don't believe so.
So is this the kind of stuff you talk about when you go to college campuses?
Yeah, it depends on if it comes up. When we go to college campuses, for the most part, I haven't done things specifically with Turning Point USA. I've been to Texas State. I had a chance to talk about what I wanted to talk about. Okay. So, but the message can lead down that path. And I think that when it does, we definitely will articulate our feelings about what we think. You know, I think that this is a good talking point, and it will be reiterated when I go to HBCUs. Me and Candace go to HBCUs and talk to young African Americans on these campuses. We're going to tell them the same thing. Like, look, man, you're being brainwashed. Let me give you the truth, and then you can make the decision and decide who you want to vote for after you got all the information. Not the information that's been hidden from you, but let you get all the information. And at the end of the day, if you believe that you would want to be on the left, there's nothing wrong with that. Some people want socialism. You know what I'm saying? Some people want handouts. If that's your decision, then at least you made a conscious decision. But we're definitely going to articulate that rhetoric, and also the fact that most of these Democratic-run cities and counties are literally in terrible conditions in some of these inner city minority communities. And terrible. The cities with the highest crime rate are Democratic ran. The cities with the highest unemployment and poverty rate, Democratic ran. With the most violence, Democratic ran. Like so what they're saying on TV is, therefore, you need to make guns illegal, right? Yeah.
That's what they're trying to say is the conclusion from that.
Yeah, and I don't even know, to be honest, I don't know how a person with a legitimate brainstem connection can make that argument. I think that, we can see all over the world where they ban guns, they still have more murder per capita than we do. When you look at our gun violence in America, 60% of our gun violence or gun deaths are suicides.
Right.
And when you look at AR-15s, people want to talk about banning assault rifles, what they call assault rifles. AR-15s, more like 3 times as many people get stabbed and beaten to death than people that get shot with AR-15s.
Right.
We can look at this last shooting that just occurred. The kid uses a sawed-off shotgun, which is illegal, and a revolver. So
they just figure nobody has any logic, and they should just say, well, ban everything anyway, and everybody starts screaming that you should do that.
Yeah, it's very ignorant to use that analogy, and I want to research the real motives. Now, some people have the hypothetical or the hypothesis of the motive that they have, which they think that they want to, have some type of government takeover. Because if you don't want people to have firearms, because listen, we're going down a slippery slope. Obviously, AR-15s are not the problem. It's people that are crazy that get a hold of AR-15s that are the problem. So just say we ban our AR-15s. The criminals are not going to just somehow turn their guns in.
Exactly. They've got a good supply right now. And in fact, it's to the advantage of the power structure that the criminals have enough weapons, because then they can have social chaos. And that justifies more government.
Yeah, and they'll sell it through the black market, and they'll be initiating more and more government programs once more and more people start dying in the inner city from other things other than guns. The kid made explosives. The kid used a sawed-off shotgun in this last shooting, and it's like, some of these people are on TV advocating that they own a shotgun instead of AR-15. And now look at you. You know what I'm saying? They saying they should own a shotgun and not an AR-15, and this kid used a shotgun to kill 10 people, almost the same amount of people that the other kid killed with an AR-15.
Right. So they would say, obviously, you have to ban shotguns too, right? Any kind of firearm.
Yeah, we're going down a slippery slope. I mean, we already see in other countries they're starting to try to ban knives. It's like
I was just going to say that in the UK, where they've already banned guns, now they have to ban knives because everybody's just stabbing each other.
Yeah, it's so funny because we have over 325 million people in this country, and maybe 300 some people died from AR-15s last year. Let's be honest. Let's be honest real quick. And I think people want to be disingenuous about this because they want political clout. School shootings are bad, but school shootings aren't even the leading cause of death of children in school anyway. You know what I'm saying? If they really cared about the death of young people in school, more kids are overdosing in school that are getting killed from mass shootings,
right?
Mass murder. We talk about, if you really care about kids losing their lives, just go to Chicago, Illinois, where Paddock in Vegas killed 58 people or something like that. Well, if you look at the numbers, there's about 58 to 60 people that die every month in Chicago alone. That's right. One city in America. And it's probably not all of Chicago. It's just the south side of Chicago.
But at least the guns are illegal, though, so they're actually safe, right?
Yeah, man. I'm telling you right now, if I can go undercover, I can take anybody anywhere, go buy a illegal gun right now. And I'm not even involved in gangs. All you got to do is go down and talk to somebody, you can probably get you an illegal gun. I mean, it's not very hard. And when I was young, I saw people buy illegal guns. People tried to sell me illegal guns when I was in high school. And it's like, man, these guns are out there. People aren't going to criminals are going to, it's just going to embolden them. They're not going to go to the NRA and do an NRA shooting. If they do, they're not going to make it too far. They're not going to go to a police precinct and do a shooting. If they do, they're not going to make it too far.
Yeah.
They're going to go to soft spots, soft targets, like the mall. They're going to go to schools where. Well,
people want to make you think that any normal person, if they have a gun, they're just going to go crazy. But if I was a teacher in a school and I had a choice of when a shooter comes through the door, whether I'd want to be armed or unarmed, and I have to say, wait, let me think. This is a hard question. It's pretty obvious.
Well, I tell you what, the teachers that are dead right now, I bet the last thing in their mind, they were probably thinking, I wish to God I had a gun. Just imagine the fear factor. See, I carry my gun everywhere I go. In the state of Arizona, you can carry concealed. You don't even need a permit. I carry concealed everywhere I go. And the funny thing is, what happened to me the other day, I went to visit a friend. We had dinner, and she cooked dinner for me, whatever. We hung out. And then after I left, the weird thing is, it was a guy that pulled up a car, and I had left my gun in the car. It was a guy that pulled up a car in the middle of the street, and he got out, and my police instincts kicked in, and also probably a little bit of PTSD from being a police officer. Mm-hmm. I thought I saw him with a rifle. And I thought I saw him with a rifle running up to the door of the neighbors across the street. And I'm like, my heart literally dropped out my chest because the fear kicked in. Like, I'm getting ready to watch a home invasion and I'm about to get killed right now because I don't even have a way to defend myself or my friend. And thank God it was like Uber Eats or something. They ordered some food and the guy had a black bag that he was running down the walkway with. And
good.
In the middle of the street. So like the fear that I felt in that moment, that like I felt naked, I felt helpless. Like, I mean, I don't understand how people don't carry guns everywhere they go. And I think the reason why, because they don't understand police work. I was a police officer. I don't trust that a police officer is going to show up here in time.
Right.
Not because they don't want to. It's because they probably have a call, 10 miles away from here. Mm-hmm. And it's going to take them several minutes to get here. And in several minutes, I'm getting killed and duct taped. And
well, people have been trained that they're incompetent to take care of themselves.
Exactly. They're afraid of guns. They're afraid to carry one. I had a friend tell me, I carry my gun everywhere I go. And they saw my gun and they were scared. Like, oh, my God, do you have a gun?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm like, dude, what do you think, it's going to jump out and bite you? Like, you should probably carry one of these. They don't shoot unless you pull the trigger on it.
Right, it's amazing.
And for the most part, people will never have to pull the trigger on their gun, to be honest.
Yeah. No,
most police officers never pull the trigger on their guns.
Right. Well, I think, we're going to have a lot more to talk about if you're ever willing to come back and do some more with us. But I think this is an incredible introduction to what you're doing. And before we say goodbye in the break here, what do you want to leave people with as thoughts to digest overnight after the show here?
Well, it's two things. I want people to be inspired and encouraged to continue to learn and be confident in what you believe. And arrogance and confidence is kind of two different things. Arrogance is believing what you believe with no evidence to support it. Confidence is that you've done the research and you studied and you've given every avenue a chance with an open mind, and you develop a thought process and a trajectory in your life that you can be proud of. That's what I want people to leave this thinking and understanding. Also, I want people to realize that we have to be more loving and compassionate towards one another, and never judge a book by its cover, and never throw a person away. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If people would have met me when I was 18 years old, they would have hated me. They would have thought I was a thug. I walked around sagging my pants with gold teeth in my mouth with Young Savage tattooed on my stomach, cussing every 2 or 3 words that come out of my mouth. Mm-hmm. And look at what God has done for me. Look how God has changed me around. Who would have thought that I would be a conservative, listening to country music and loving them and pro-America, coming from where I came from. And I just want us all to be kind enough to give people the grace to not judge a book by its cover, or not let that be the only judgment. And to have compassion on other people and hear both sides. And if somebody don't agree with you and they're on the left and you on the right, or if they're on the right and you on the left, take some time and try to encourage them and teach them the right thing, and be open-minded that maybe one day they'll come around. So loving one another is another aspect that I want to leave people with. Yeah,
I think that's the best thing. So, well, I'm super inspired. I'm really grateful that everybody got to meet you tonight. I hope this is going to go everywhere, and I'm sure it will. And hope you'll be back before too long, and maybe get to meet you in person pretty soon too. So hold on, and we'll say goodbye in the break here. Okay, everybody, there goes Brandon Tatum. Incredibly inspiring person. I really appreciate Brandon's work. And I think his message is incredibly empowering. It's an antidote to helplessness and racism and low energy and division and feeling like there's nothing you can do. Is the opposite is true. There's always something you can do. It starts inside yourself with a little change in attitude that's just waiting there for you, and it affects everyone around you. And there are all these abilities that you have that are sleeping that you might as well wake them up now. Time is passing and it's too valuable to blow away. So learn about Brandon's work. Also at Turning Point, tpusa.com. Great organization that he's helping now. And you can find him also on Facebook, Brandon Tatum, and look for his YouTube channel. And remember that besides this normal Sunday night show that's every week on blogtalkradio.com/LostArtsRadio, which is educational, and we look for inspiring people who can teach us things that are valuable in our lives. But we also just started a new show, Additional Day, Lost Arts Radio Live, which is live streaming on our Lost Arts Radio Facebook page and YouTube channel. Saturdays 4:30 p.m. Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern U.S. time, and all the archives are posted right after the show as well, so you can go there and see them for free. But we have ulterior motives here at Lost Arts Radio. We want to give you health information and life information that has been kept away from you for a long time, and we're not supposed to be sharing it now even, but we're just going to go ahead and do it anyway. And if you want to get deeper into your real potential, into transforming yourself and your personal life, your health, your relationships, everything about your experience of everyday life, and find out what your real abilities are, we're going to get directly into it. Go to lostartsradio.com/club, C-L-U-B. It's lostartsradio.com/club, and we'll tell you how to get into that new format. We're going to start getting into real direct work on personal situations, health situations, and access to information that you're not supposed to get, and we're going to give it to you. So meet us there. Hope you have a great week, and see you next Saturday.
Introducing Lost Arts Radio Live, our new Saturday late afternoon, early evening 1-hour live stream show. This new show precedes our Planetary Healing Club, which starts at 9 p.m. Eastern and 6 p.m. Pacific. The Planetary Healing Club, which is not free and open to the public, but you can join for a minimum donation of just $10 a month. Our new live stream show, which is free, starts Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern and 4:30 Pacific. It can be accessed by going to lostartsradio.com/live. You can tune into our live stream from our Facebook page at facebook.com/lostartsradio, from our YouTube channel at youtube.com/lostartsradio, as well as both Periscope and Twitter at Lost Arts Radio. You can ask questions during the show by using the chat function on YouTube, or make a comment on Facebook during the live stream. Once again, that's Lost Arts Radio Live, Saturdays at 7:30 Eastern, 4:30 Pacific. As of January 2018, the Saturday live call-in show is now an interactive video platform called the Planetary Healing Club. The cost is just a $10 minimum monthly donation, automatically billed through your PayPal account. Sign up at lostartsradio.com/club. The Planetary Healing Club is every Saturday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. You get your link to participate in the show upon signing up as a member. Those shows are also archived as well for club members. Listen to our new shows with guests every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. All Sunday shows with guests have archives freely available on our website at lostartsradio.com. You can also find them at blogtalkradio.com/lostartsradio, as well as our YouTube channel, youtube.com/C/lostartsradio. Mixcloud at mixcloud.com/lostartsradio. And finally, look us up under the podcast directory on iTunes. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/lostartsradio, or on Twitter at Lost Arts Radio. Be sure to join the free Lost Arts Radio Facebook group as well. Just search for Lost Arts Radio Group within Facebook. You can also join our forum on our website if you want to interact with other listeners. We also have links to all of the great independent musicians whose music we feature each week on Lost Arts Radio. When you do your Amazon shopping, please use Amazon's Smile program at smile.amazon.com. And when you choose Lost Arts Research Institute in Sedona, Arizona as your charity, Amazon will donate 0.5% of whatever your order total is to Lost Arts Research Institute to help fund the building of the school and keep our radio show on the air. Please visit lostartsresearchinstitute.org for more information on the school we want to build. Be sure to sign up for our free weekly newsletter on our site under the Radio Show tab or right from the button on our Facebook page. Contact Richard at richard@lostartsradio.com or myself, Doug Diamond, at doug@lostartsradio.com. Thanks again for listening to Lost Arts Radio, and we'll see you again next week.
Living in America used to be a dream for so many people far away and unseen, with their big cars, movie stars, living in America. Now all hail to the red, white, and blue. Living in America was a dream. In this land they tell you to reach for anything you want, that everything is possible, just believe that you can. 'Cause we're God's chosen children, living in America with that long house and white picket fences. Living in America was a dream. Now they believe that their Savior has come to deliver all their people back to the kingdom. Better not try to stop us or get in our way, 'cause we have what it takes to change the world again. Little brother, our queen and country follows us everywhere. 'Cause they've lost their voice, they've lost their way, and feel safe in our shadow. Now it's all gone, the glory days, living in America in that high rise with those jumbo fries. Living in America in those big cars, movie stars. Living in America, they're all hail to the red, white, and blue. Living in America, 'cause we're God's chosen children. Living in America with those big fries, oh, those big, big fries. Living